Time to work on the Pioneer SX 550. I think I was calling it a 450 if I haven't already mentioned that. I think I was calling it a 450. It's a 550. But anyway, I'm going to remove not only the vinyl veneer, but I'm going to remove this backing as well. And probably do a little bit of wood filler. I think I have some two-piece, like a pot, like a, not an, yeah, I guess it's kind of like an epoxy wood filler. If not, I'll go out and get some. Although these corners aren't horrible, they're dinged up a little bit. But anyway, basically, I'm going to use a heat gun. I'll kind of show you what this looks like. I won't go real crazy with it, but got to plug the heat gun in first. There we go. So, again, I don't go crazy with the heat, but you want to soften that glue up. And then you can grab it, pull it back, right, exposing the particle board. Just a time-consuming process. So it's kind of hard to do this with get rid of that garbage. I've left this on before. I mean, I've glued on top of this layer before, but you know, I think it adheres better to the actual wood. So get it nice and hot. What I've also done is like use a putty knife to get in underneath this, loosen it up a little bit. It doesn't really take that long. Man, this stuff's sticking pretty good though. There we go. See, it'll start to loosen up a little bit. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to remove all that. We're going to glue the new veneer onto it, and then I will sand it down and kind of walk you through the steps, at least what I do. And again, I'm not a woodworker, but I haven't had a problem with these real simple re-veneers. So anyway, I will come back when this is done. Now when it comes to the front and the top, it's a slightly different material. It's pretty rigid. So and I'm not removing the veneer on the inside. There's no point in doing that. So you have to heat this up a little bit more, get it nice and hot, and then I use the putty knife to pull this off. Hopefully you could hear that over the sound of the heat gun. But if you heat that up nice and good, get it nice and hot, this comes off pretty easy. And there's no sense in fighting with this, just get it hot. And comes right off like that. So this one is ready to go. We'll do this one. These corners look all right. They're a little bit iffy. And I don't know if I'm gonna. I mentioned using some wood filler to build these corners up, but I don't know if I'm gonna do that or not. Not a super expensive receiver here, so, and that would just add to the time. So anyway, let me finish doing this, and then we'll look at applying the veneer. So that really didn't take very long. Maybe it was less than 10 minutes to remove that. Now it's got a pretty rough, right, surface, so I'm just going to hit it with my orbital sander, get it nice and smooth, clean up any of the dust, and then apply the veneer. So I'm going to hit the edges where I removed that backing material and get this cleaned up. I don't know what that is, some chunk of glue. Because you want it to be nice and smooth so the veneer will adhere to the new surface. So anyway, that's what I'll be doing. So we smooth these out, sanded them down. What I'll be doing next is I'm going to clean these off Make sure all the junk is off of them. And there are the sheets of veneer. I've been looking for some kind of project for these sheets of veneer, because this is some leftover from some other projects, and I'm down to just a handful of sheets. Now this is paperback veneer. I've used raw veneer, paperback veneer. I used paperback on the Sony turntable that I refinished. So what I'll do is first I'm going to cut this right a little bit larger than the actual size of the panel. I guess I'm only going to use one piece. I don't like to use like this. See where that seam is? I don't really like to use pieces of veneer where you can see that pattern there. So I'll save that one. So this one will be much better, but I want to use this one piece for both pieces. I'll have plenty. Actually, just cut it right in half, and I'll have extra, and then I'll trim off about a couple inches here. So split this, trim it off up here. That'll give me enough material for strips for the front and the sides. And then I will apply the glue. I use contact cement. And what I'm going to be doing with the contact cement is I apply it to the sides. I apply it to the back of the paper. I just use like a throwaway paintbrush, which I usually have a bunch on hand. Hopefully I have one. If not, I'll have to sacrifice an old brush. So, and then I let it sit for like 10 minutes or whatever the instructions say, and then I adhere it, and then I place a piece of wax paper, right? I'm going to put a piece of wax paper between these two, clamp them, right? Piece of wax paper here, or I'm going to use the wax paper that I have separating the two, and then I'll clamp it here, let it cure for a couple of hours, then I'll trim it, right? And then I'll reclamp it. And then let it sit for like 24 hours, then I'll apply some finish to it. So that's my process, or my procedure anyway. So I'm going to do that, and I will come back after I have applied the veneer. You know, sometimes, yeah, and the way I trim it is I use my hand router. So what I may do instead, now that I think about it, is I'm going to cut, trim, right? Apply the veneer, use my veneer knife to make sure it's nice and tight. I'll let it kind of start to adhere. I'll give it about 20 or 30 minutes. I'll trim it with the router, and then I'll clamp everything together so it dries. That's probably a better way to do it. So that's what I'll be doing. And I'll check back in after the veneer has been applied. Veneer has been applied to the sides. So what I do is take my veneer scraper here and make sure I get the veneer down, right, nice and tight. Now, as far as the holes go, what I do is once the veneer is adhered for 24 hours, I will very carefully from the back side kind of drill out a pilot hole, and then I will take my router and I'll route out the holes on the other side. So I'm gonna make sure this veneer is down here good, and get my router. I mean, I'm not going to do it immediately after, but I will let it tack up for a little bit. Right, trim the edges, and then I'll do the tops in the front, and then I'll come back when everything's been applied. So I'll do the same thing on the tops and sides, right? I'll use my veneer knife and then trim them, and then I will get the wax paper, clamp everything together, and let it sit overnight. Panels have been re-veneered. I do have to clean up some of the edges, but I'm going to do that after I clamp this down and let it sit overnight. So I just kind of wanted to show you the finished product. Again, some of these edges, you can see a little bit of the paper, which you're going to see a little bit of that paper anyway, but I don't like to try to clean this up until the glue is really set. So I kind of get it, mostly good, and then work on it. So anyway, this is where it sits right now. I'm going to get some wax paper, clamp this up, and let it dry overnight. Come back, throw some Danish oil on it, or whatever finish I'm going to do on this, and then kind of show you the finished product on the receiver. I do need to clean up my bench because this is a mess now. All right. So anyway, next segment will be probably me maybe throwing some Danish oil on these, or maybe just me throwing them on the receiver. I don't know yet. Well, my garage has kind of exploded on me. Got all sorts of speakers I got to do some stuff with. But I wanted to show you the veneer on the Pioneer SX550. I think it turned out pretty good. All right. A couple of coats of Danish oil. Now I may do one more, maybe sand it a little bit smoother. I mean, it's okay right now, but I think it looks pretty good. Probably not perfect, but much better than it was. And Ralph, where did you go? Dogs are in the garage with me. So anyway, I'm just going to wrap this up here. I know I said I was going to maybe film applying the Danish oil. I mean, it's just wiping it on, letting it sit for 15 minutes, wiping off excess. Then you do another coat, right? And then you wait a little bit, do another coat. So, but I'm going to go ahead and call this one done and get it back to the shop. A little bit more cleanup on the back of it that I will do. Oh, look what happened. I left my soldering iron on. That is not good. I need to make sure I turn that off. All right, so anyway, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video.